Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another news and rumor video to discuss. We got a signing to talk about, a couple of injury updates, some waiver updates, and we've got some trade rumors to talk about involving the Blackhawks, the Maple Leafs, the Predators, and the Buffalo Sabres. And all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Hockey Channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. We're never to without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so something else goes in today's video. So in today's video, we've got a couple of things to talk about. We're going to start off as we usually do by talking about some signings from our past couple of days. We saw two signings from our past couple of days, one an ELC, one a contract extension, so we'll get to both of those here. First, we saw the Winnipeg Jets sign 4th round pick, 109th overall, forward prospect Kevin He to a 3-year ELC with a fee of $873,000 that begins at the start of next year. This is a really important ELC. He is the first, if I'm correct, Chinese-born player to get a contract in the NHL, so that's very fantastic stuff there for he and for the Winnipeg Jets. So far, he last year put up 31 goals and 53 points in 64 OHL games. He looked phenomenal last year, was taken in the 4th round of last year's draft. So far this year, already has 23 goals and 43 points in only 29 games, so he's only 10 points back of last year's point total, and he's played nearly half less. So he's looked phenomenal this year. He, I think, eventually could be a solid second, third line forward there for the Jets in a couple of years' time. So it's not going to be a player who gets into the lineup at some point this year, but he, I think, could be a very fantastic prospect there for the Jets and eventually a top 9 forward in the next year or two. So that could be a really good pickup there for the Jets. The contract extension was in Calgary. The Calgary Flames had signed Braden Pachal, who's in the final year of a 2-year deal with a fee of league minimum, $775,000 that he signed with Vegas a couple of years back. The Flames have liked what Pachal's brought, so they signed the NYR forward to a 2-year contract extension with an AAV of $1.19 million. It's not too bad of a deal in my opinion for Pachal. He's a third pair defenseman. He can be a solid guy. He's still on the younger side of things. He'll be a UFA as soon as this deal ends, and it's under $1.5 million, which is not overly bad for the Calgary Flames. So this is a pretty good deal in my opinion for the Flames. Pachal last year split time between Vegas and Calgary. He started the season with Vegas, putting up a goal in 17 games, was placed on waivers, claimed off of waivers by Calgary where he had a goal in 6 points in 33 games, looked pretty good. So far this year only has a goal and 2 points in 32 games this year with Calgary, but he's in a solid third pair defenseman, has played up higher in the lineup if there were some injuries. So Pachal seems like a very versatile defenseman, can be playing up higher in the lineup, can be a solid third pair defenseman. So all in all, a pretty good sign there for the Flames. It's under $1.5 million. It's a very low risk deal for the Flames, and if it doesn't work out overly well, they can place it on waivers and send down to the minors. So it's an interesting pickup there, but Pachal's worked really well with Calgary since being claimed off waivers, and I think it could be a really good pickup there. So two signings from our past couple of days, as Kevin He signs his ELC with the Winnipeg Jets, while Braden Pachal signs an extension in Calgary. So some interesting signing updates from our past couple of days. Going over to an injury update from our past couple of days, we saw a couple of injury updates. Victor Hedman officially returned to game action on Tuesday after missing 2 games with a lower body injury. So the Bolts get their top defenseman and their captain back in the lineup after missing a couple of games. So that's really great news there for Tampa. Jack Drury has officially undergone hand surgery and will be out at least the next 4 weeks, so that's a horrible blow there for the Hurricanes as they lose a solid 3rd, 4th line center for the next 4 weeks around that timetable. So bad stuff there for Carolina. Anthony Stolarz underwent a knee procedure and is out 4 to 6 weeks, which is an awful blow there for the Leafs to lose their tandem goaltender for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Stolarz was playing great, so it's a bad blow there. Well, David Camp was active off of long-term injury reserve and got back into game action Wednesday after he missed 12 games with a lower body injury. So really great to see Camp back there. It's not going to replace the loss of Stolarz, but Camp is a solid 4th line center who should be a solid pickup there for the Leafs to get back from injury. So really good stuff there. Victor Arvidsson, who has missed 15 games with an undisclosed injury, might be back at some point on the weekend for the Edmonton Oilers. So that could be a really big boost there for the Oilers to get Arvidsson, their offseason acquisition, back in the lineup after he's missed so much time. Ivan Barbashev is day-to-day with upper body injury and may miss a game or two for the Golden Knights. So that could be a bad blow there for the Knights to lose their offensive scoring leader in Ivan Barbashev. Peter Mrazek, who skated before practice, may return on Thursday from his groin injury. So that could be a really good boost there for the Blackhawks to get Mrazek back. Well, Seth Jones, who has missed 14 games with a foot injury, is now listed as day-to-day, so he's been upgraded from week to week to day-to-day, and could return as early as Thursday as well. So the Blackhawks could be getting some key veterans back in Jones and Mrazek in the not-too-distant future. Philip Gustafsson missed his 2nd straight game on Wednesday with a short-term injury, and he's still out. He's missed a couple of games now, so that's a bad blow there for the Wild to still have Gustafsson, their starting level goaltender, out with an injury. Anthony Duclair, who has missed 28 games with a leg injury, has been medically cleared and could return in the very near future. future. There's no exact timetable for his return, but probably next game or two we could see Duclair be back for the Islanders. So that's really great news there for New York, who could be getting another scoring offensive weapon in their forward group in the not distant future. Matt Dumba, who has missed 3 games with an upper body injury, has finally been placed on injury reserve. So it's a bad blow there for the Stars. Dumba's been a solid second pair defenseman for the Stars this year. So to see him go down with an injury is no overly great. Curtis Lazar was activated off of injury reserve and got back into game action on Tuesday after he missed just over 6 weeks with a knee injury. So it's a bad blow there for the Devils when he got his injury, but Lazar just saw bomb 6 forward, and to see him get back, it's fantastic news there for New Jersey. It's great news to see Lazar back for the Devils. Dante Fabro left Tuesday's game for the Blue Jackets with a leg injury and didn't return, so that's an awful blow there for the Jackets to see Dante Fabro, who was a waiver acquisition from just a little while ago, be out with an injury, so that's a bad blow there. Jack Johnson is questionable for the next game for the Jackets after taking a stick to the eye on Sunday, while Igor Chinnikov has finally started skating, but is still out with an upper body injury that has kept him out at 11 games. So good to see Chinnikov start to skate. That's great news, and it seems like Johnson and Fabro won't miss too much time, but both of them did leave the most recent game for the Jackets, so hopefully Johnson and Fabro go back in not just in future, and Chinnikov, now that he's resumed skating, won't be out for an over long period of time, so really great news there. Vitek Vanecek is out week to week with upper body injury for the San Jose Sharks. They've recalled Yaroslav Askarov from the minors, so that's good news to see Askarov get some playing time for the Sharks, but Vanecek was on the bench and he apparently took a puck to the face area and he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. That's a bad blow there for the Sharks. Nikolai Ehlers was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action for the Jets on Wednesday after missing 9 games with a lower body injury. So Ehlers was out for a while, but he's a really big piece of that top 6, so to see him get back into game action on Wednesday was fantastic news there for the Jets. Alex Lyon returned to game action and was activated off of injury reserve after missing 3 weeks with a lower body injury, so getting Lyon back is a massive boost there for the Red Wings goaltending core, so really great news there. Well, Simone Edvinsson left Wednesday's game with upper body injury and didn't return, so that's a bad blow there. Edvinsson's been a solid top pair defenseman, Sider's D partner for the past little while, so to see him go down with an injury is bad, and hopefully he won't miss too much time. And Alex Barkov returned to game action after missing 2 games with an illness, so really great news to see Barkov get back into game action, but still, it's really bad to see him miss at least a couple of games, but at least he's back in the game action now. He got back on Wednesday, so some interesting injury updates on our past couple days. Good to see guys like Duclair, Ehlers, Jones, and Arvidsson either already get back or should be able to get back and not just in future, but bad news to see guys like Drury, Stolarz, Barbashev, and Vanecek all be out with injuries, and hopefully they won't miss too much time due to injuries, but some interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. Going over to a couple of quick waiver updates from our past little while. Back over on Tuesday, we talked about how Justin Dowling and Chris Wagner were on waivers for the Avalanche and the Devils. We weren't sure if they were going to clear or not, but I assumed that with them being more AHL players than NHL players, they would probably both clear. That did indeed happen. Wagner and Dowling both cleared waivers for their respective teams and were sent down to the AHL affiliates. So good news for the Avalanche and the Devils to keep bomb 6 players who are call-up options. We saw 4 new players be placed on waivers. That was recently signed Ty Felhaber in Colorado. That was Mark Delgazio in Nashville. That was Grant Hutton in New York I, and that was Dylan Coghlan in Winnipeg. So some made sense, some didn't make sense. For the Islanders, with the recent return of Pelech, Barzal, and the near return of Anthony Duclair, they need to make some roster space, so to move Hutton down is not too surprising. He's a 7th-ace defenseman who's more of an AHLer at this point in time, so I'm not too surprised they placed him on waivers. Ty Felhaber was recently just signed by the Avalanche. He's more of an AHLer, so he'll probably go back down to the AHL. I'm not surprised they placed him on waivers. Gaizo and Coghlan are interesting. Coughlin's a really solid 6th, 7th defenseman. He can be a 3rd-pair defenseman at the NHL level, and Gaizo is a younger player who has some NHL experience, but is more of an AHLer too, but he's a younger player who I think could eventually be a solid 3rd-pair defenseman, so to see Delgazio and Coghlan placed on waivers is a little bit surprising. Now I think that there's a chance that maybe one of Delgazio or Coghlan would be claimed, but I thought there was also a possibility that maybe all 4 of them do wind up clearing, and that is exactly what happened. Hutton, Coghlan, Delgazio, and Felhaber all wound up clearing, so not too surprised Felhaber and Hutton cleared. I'm a tiny bit surprised Coghlan and Delgazio weren't claimed by some team who was in desperate need of some defensive help, but still they're on the younger side of things. I could have seen them cleared, so all 4 wound up clearing. And then Tyler Johnson, who just signed a new contract with the Boston Bruins back over in November, has been placed on unconditional waivers for purpose of contract termination. Now Johnson's a decent bomb 6 forward. He was brought in to help the Boston Bruins bomb 6, but it doesn't seem like he's working overly well in Boston, so it seems like the Bruins really want to get rid of his contract, so he's been placed on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. There's a very likely chance he'll clear. You don't usually see players to replace the unconditional waivers be claimed. So those are the waiver updates from our past couple of days. We'll have to wait and see if Johnson winds up clearing or not. But we saw Dowling in New Jersey, Wagner and Felhaber in Colorado, Hutton in New York, Gaizo in Nashville, and Coghlan, Winnipeg, all clear waivers and sent down to the AHL affiliates. So interesting out there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. Now, when it comes to trade rumors, we have a handful of things to talk about in this video. The NHL roster freeze is upon us. I'm taking this video on Thursday, so it might be a little bit outdated. There might be a couple of trades after this video, so if there is, just keep that in mind. But as of right now, we have heard some things leading up to the roster freezes of potential moves that could happen, but we've also heard a couple of other things. One of the things we want to talk about here is Taylor Hall. Now, after being scratched earlier in the season, I think it was in late November, he was scratched by the Blackhawks. Hall's turned it up a whole bunch. He has 5 goals and 8 points in his last 10 games, nearly a point per game. I think that was recently after being scratched. He's looking phenomenal. He's a hat trick, his first hat trick in a couple of years. So Hall's looking really good, and that sort of skyrocketed him on a couple of people's trade bait lists. So it seems like Hall's going to be a prime trade target for the Hawks. Probably doesn't get moved before the roster freeze. Will probably be a trade chip closer to the 2025 trade deadline. But Hall's a guy who's in the final year of his deal. He's making $6 million. If the Hawks retain half of his salary, they'd be able to get that cap it down to $3 million. I think a lot of teams, especially cup-containing teams who could use another top 6 forward at $3 million, would love to add a guy like Taylor Hall who has playoff experience. So I think there could be a couple of teams out there who would have some interest in Hall. I think the Hawks get like a second round pick and a good prospect for Hall, which would be really good given what they had to give up to get Hall. So interesting note there, but it definitely looks like at this point in time Hall is gaining a lot of trade interest, and there's a very likely chance before a trade deadline we do see a Taylor Hall move. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. Going over to the Toronto Maple Leafs and Philadelphia Flyers. Now, we recently heard Paul Bisonnette talking about the Maple Leafs, and he thinks that the Toronto Maple Leafs should target a guy like Scott Laughton. Now, we've heard Laughton and Leafs be rumored a couple of times over the past little while. Laughton was a pending UFA. We did hear a lot about him being linked to Toronto. I think that was because of Kyle Dubas and him really wanting Laughton, but it still makes some sense. Laughton is a very physical, very hard to play against third-line center. I know that the center position is something the Leafs are really trying to upgrade right now, and we know that the Flyers are a team who is very invested in potentially making some sort of a move to try and move off some pieces. We've heard Farabee's name, we've heard Frost's name, Lon's another name that's been coming up in trade rumors over the past little while, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens with Philadelphia. Like I said, there's no actual connections. Bisonnette just was speculating, but it does make some sense. The Leafs are looking for a third-line, second-line center. Lon fits that bill. He's also a playoff-style forward, which could really help the Maple Leafs, and we know that the Flyers are probably going to be sellers at this year's trade deadline, so it does make some sort of sense. I don't know what the Flyers would want in return for Laughton. They'd probably want something like a second-round pick and a really high-level prospect. I'm not sure if the Leafs really want to give up that for Laughton, but we're going to have to wait and see. It's an interesting proposition. I think that could be a really good landing spot there for Scott Laughton in Toronto, so we're going to have to wait and see on that. When it comes to New York Rangers, David Pagnotta of the fourthperiod.com was talking about them recently. Now, we recently just saw Kakko get traded by the New York Rangers to the Seattle Kraken, and that might be the first of many moves the Rangers make before the 2025 trade deadline, and they might try and go into this offseason trying to reshape this roster. Well, Pagnotta thinks that after they trade Kakko, the next name that's going to be a really hot topic is K'Andre Miller. K'Andre Miller is a solid top 4 left shot defenseman for New York Rangers, but just like Kakko, he's in the final year of his deal. He's an RFA with ARB rates at the end of the deal, so a contract extension might get hairy in the offseason if he has ARB rates, and he could be walked right into free agency. So with that in mind, there's a very likely chance that some people out there have said that with Miller not having the best of starts to the season, that the Rangers may try and trade him. Now, they could probably get a lot better of a return for Miller than they could for Kakko. Kakko's never really been a very fantastic forward. Miller has actually had a pretty good couple of years. I mean, this year, like we said, he's had a slow start. He hasn't looked the best, but then again, so have the Rangers. I mean, the whole Rangers team hasn't looked overly great, but Miller is a young player. If he can get like a 5 to 6 year deal at like $5 to $6 million, I think that would be a steal for a couple of teams. So I'm not exactly sure if the Rangers would really want to keep him as a solid top 4 left shot defenseman, or if they want to move him and try and get something in return. It'll be interesting out there, but Pagnotta definitely thinks that Miller might be one of the next players to go in New York. Now, he's on IR right now. He's got an upper body injury, so like I said, I don't think it's something that'll happen before the trade freeze, but I do think this is something that's going to happen closer to the trade deadline. And if the Rangers really don't see a fit with Miller long term, or if they think that he'll have some sort of contract negotiation problems in the offseason, I think there is a possibility out there that they could trade K'Andre Miller. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but look for the Rangers to potentially deal K'Andre Miller after they recently just dealt Kakko. When it comes to the Buffalo Sabres and the Detroit Red Wings, according to a Twitter post I saw that mentioned that Elliot Friedman said that one of the Sabres' prominent scouts was recently scouting the Detroit Red Wings game, and it's possible they could try and be hooking up on a deal. Now, I'm not sure if it'll happen before the roster freeze. Maybe it will. We'll have to wait and see. But we know that the Red Wings and the Sabres are not teams who have had overly great starts to the year. The Red Wings are, I think, 2 games below 500. The Sabres are, I think, 5 or 6 games below 500. Both teams are trying to get out of these rebuilds that they're in, and at this point in time, at least as of the recording of this video, Ottawa's currently surpassing them right now. Ottawa's in a playoff spot. Ottawa's contending with Tampa and Boston for at least the top 3 spot in the Atlantic, while Buffalo and Detroit are in the basement of the Eastern Conference. So there's a very likely chance that those two teams really need some sort of a shakeup. We know that Yzerman's plan has not done overly much for the Red Wings, except for getting them really close to a playoff spot last year. We know that Buffalo, except for getting really close to a playoff spot 2 years ago, has not been able to make any noise and is still missing the playoffs. If they miss it again, it'll be like, I think, 13 or 14 years in a row. So both teams need some sort of a shakeup. There's a lot of talk about Cousins out there and Byram and Buffalo. There's been some talk about Detroit making some sort of a move to try and add a top 6 forward, maybe help their blue line by getting someone who can help on the defensive end. There's been some talk about maybe them moving on from a guy like Kopp or Comfer or one of those longer term tenured veterans on that team. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens here. But Elliot Friedman apparently said a prominent scout from Buffalo was scouting the Detroit game yesterday, and maybe there's some sort of a hookup between those two sides. We're gonna have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to the Nashville Predators, Matt Larkin of Daily Faceoff was recently talking about this and said there's a very likely chance that if this Nashville Predators season does not turn around in early January, that the Nashville Predators could go on a full teardown. There's a very likely shot at it. We recently saw the Predators open their selling options by moving on from Alex Carrier to Montreal, and that might just be the start of the teardown. Now, according to Larkin, he thinks that Nyquist is a very no-brainer move. He's in the final year of his deal. He's making $3.1 million. There's a very likely chance that a lot of teams who are looking for some middle six help for scoring forward could definitely look to Nyquist as a potential trade option. So there's a very likely chance Nyquist probably doesn't survive the trade deadline in Nashville, so we'll have to wait and see on that. When it comes to other potential options there for the Predators to potentially move, that's guys like Luke Schenn and Jeremy Lauzon. Both are hard-hitting playoff-style defensemen who could be really good value adds and are still signed through next season, so there's a very likely chance that a couple of teams could try and check in on them. Colton Sissons, who's a solid bomb 6'4", has been a long-time Nashville Predator. That's another potential trade option. Larkin also suggests they consider at least moving Ryan O'Reilly and Thomas Novak. O'Reilly and Novak, I think, both have 2 years left. O'Reilly at $4.5 million, Novak at $3 million. O'Reilly's a really good veteran who knows what it takes to win a Stanley Cup, but Novak's a fantastic second, third line goal scorer. So we're gonna have to wait and see on what happens and how far the Predators are willing to go when it comes to a potential rebuild or a sort of sell-off. But we're gonna have to wait and see on what happens there. But Nashville is the lowest team in the NHL. I think they're the only team who has not reached double-digit wins yet. Every other NHL team has, except for the Predators. So there's a very likely chance that we see Nashville make some sort of move in the not-too-distant future. And I think there's a very likely chance we could see many moves happen for the Predators before the March 7th, 2025 trade deadline. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. But that's what we're talking for today. I'll let you guys thoughts on all of this and my last trade rumor video before the holiday freeze down in the comment section below. What are some of your opinions on all the stuff that we discussed here today? Do you think Nashville goes full sell mode? And if so, who do you think winds up leaving? Do you think that the Leafs could try and acquire a lot? And if so, what sort of return could Philadelphia get? Do you think the Rangers move on from K'Andre Miller? And if so, what sort of return could they get? Do you think the Hawks move on from Hull? If so, what sort of return do you think they could get? Do you think that the Sabres and Red Wings will make a trade? And if so, who could they try and swap? And definitely left your guys' thoughts on the injury updates, waiver updates, and signings from the past couple of days. Definitely left your guys' thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I want to talk about for today. Until this video, if you're like to subscribe down below. Thank you all for your support. We're new to without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so you can also listen to this video. Also a blog to about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. The link in the description below. And can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.